I'll just share a little bit more. Years ago, I was very active in some of the protests against the Keystone XL pipeline. And when I lived in Washington, D.C., there I connected with a whole group of people who were, some of them had science backgrounds, as I did, but they were essentially making a moral call for climate action in a way that I hadn't heard before. They were at the point where, I would say, as a climate movement, we were kind of at the point where we had been trying the data, like putting the data out there and getting people to change their ways based on the data. And it felt to me like a moment, this was back in 2011, where people were like, we need to find ways to reach people's hearts. We need to find ways to talk about how what we're doing today affects not only communities today, but generations to come. And some of those connections, we would say in Jewish language, we would say ledor vador, from generation to generation. How do we think about what we're doing now, our responsibility to future generations, the world that we actually want to be building, all of that. And that, for me, that was a turning point, sort of a moment when I said, okay, well, I got to focus on this moral call to climate action, because we have the science. The science is clear, and it's not getting through to enough people. And it was also a moment for me of noticing some of the ways in which big-scale, systems-level work can help move the needle on climate in ways that a lot of the work I had been doing had been backyard composting or trying to get the kiddish, the meal after services, like turned into, I don't know, something more vegetarian or more, there's a lot of important localized and individualized work that is happening, and I would say we need it all. We need it all. And we can't just stop with compostable kiddish, right? Like, we also need to think about what is the bigger picture of the world we're trying to build, and how we're going to get there is together. As Bill McKibben says, one of the best things we can do for climate as individuals is to be less of an individual. So here we are together. And for me, that journey led me to move to Boston, to go to rabbinical school, to move into, I worked in Jewish education for a number of years at Brandeis, at Hebrew College, and I've been with Dayenu for 4 years now. We're 5 years old. I was consulting during its first year. And one of the things that Rabbi Jenny Rosen, who's the founder of Dayenu, built as one of the core pillars of Dayenu's work was something we call spiritual adaptation, which essentially is this idea that the climate crisis is not only an economic, a justice crisis, a crisis of ecology in so many ways, of our ecosystem breakdown. It is also an issue and a crisis that raises big existential questions about how we live today and how we will live in the future. I work with a lot of young people, a lot of people like college age through, I don't know, whatever counts as young these days. And one of the things, and a lot of people who are new grandparents. And one of the things I often hear is a lot of concern about the world, either that we're growing up in or that kids or grandkids are growing up in, and even, whether to have kids given the state of the world, these things. And those are, I would not say questions like that are classic. They're not questions of like, what is the state of water pollution or of air pollution, which are also core climate questions, but rather they're really questions of the soul, of our lives, and of how we live well. I'll say the other thing that comes up often is, this came up most recently. We were running like a spiritual practice for climate leaders series with Kirva, which is a Musar, and there's a world of Jewish spiritual practice called Musar, so exploring different values and themes like joy and responsibility and humility, and like how those different elements are integrated into our climate work. We'll run another series soon. I can let you know. Sign up if you want to know more. But one of the things that came up in that series is really the question of what does joy look like? How are we supposed to be happy on a, anyone else had this experience in like February, we get like a warm day, and it's just like, I know, especially here, I'm like, oh, thank goodness I go out, I soak up the sunshine, but also I feel like kind of awful because it shouldn't be like that. Hey, Rachel, welcome.
How you doing?
Rachel's my colleague at Dayenu. She's our campaign manager.
Nice to meet y'all.
Great to have you here. So it's like those moments when it's just like, but also it's so nice, and also the gardening season is longer, and all the, like, there's a lot of ways in which I think the contradictions of this time are alive, and I would even say, one of the things that's a foundation at Dayenu is that simcha, is that joy. How do we go about taking action in a movement that has lots of doom and gloom, where there's a lot that is scary and very real challenges and threats. I mean, we just heard from Green Roots down there some of the ways in which communities in Chelsea and East Boston are very dramatically impacted. I live in a part of Dorchester that also has been traditionally redlined and has much higher temperatures in the summertime, and many of my neighbors don't have AC, and it's right there. It's like it's happening right now. And what does it look like to do this work in a way that sustains us, where we're less, particularly a lot of the young activists I work with, they've been going since like middle school. They've like grown up with climate change as a reality. And so the number of people I've met who are in their mid-20s who like already kind of burned out and are coming to Dayenu music and arts events for like a little bit of Jewish wisdom, a little bit of like a dose of recharge, is striking to me. And I think it's one of the reasons why at Dayenu we've created this field of spiritual adaptation as a way to both draw deeply on Jewish wisdom for living in these times and for helping, I would say, like charge up a Jewish climate movement, but also are drawing heavily on music and arts and other forms of joy and connection. When we sing together, we are breathing together. We are, whether marching in the streets or gathering here. I did not start in song, but maybe we'll end in song. So that is some of the framework, some of the context. I'll say spiritual adaptation, the kind of body of work I hold at Dayenu, stands alongside our campaigns work. We call it building political power. We do a lot of turning out climate-concerned voters along with the Environmental Voter Project, and we work closely to build people power across the country. We have over 70 Dayenu circles across the country. Many are based at congregations. Some are based in communities, and it's rapidly growing. We have a bunch of Dayenu circle leaders who are at this conference, so that's fun. I can tell you more about all that stuff later, or just go to Rachel's session later today and learn more. But what I'm going to focus on more here is what do we do with some of those existential questions? And I'll say one of the ways that we've been doing that is through, we kind of looked at the field of who's doing spiritual resilience work in the context of climate change. Who is thinking about the role of taking action, not just because our world needs it, but how it can help our neshama, like our souls, our spirits, like what are the ways in which we actually kind of need that reminder that we have power, that there's what we can do, even if we can't do everything. It says in Perkei Avot, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, v'lo ata ben chorin, like it is not our jobs to do the entirety of the work. In fact, we couldn't solve climate change alone, but neither are we free to desist from it. So given that, we ended up turning to, after kind of doing a survey of the broader whole field at the time, about 5 years ago, and ongoing, we turned to the work of Joanna Macy and the work that reconnects. Who I'm curious, like who's familiar? Okay, great. So Joanna Macy is a Buddhist scholar and teacher. She's in her 90s now in the Bay Area, and she is an eco-theologian and activist, and she developed this field called the work that reconnects, and with her permission, we've adapted it to a Jewish context. And it is, I'm not going to go too deep into that because happy to talk more, but we run like 2.5, 3 hour like workshops in like based on the work that reconnects, and we have about half an hour now. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you the big picture overview of the work that reconnects, and then we're gonna have fun having an experience of one of those pieces. And then we'll like debrief it a little bit, and I'll share a little bit about like ways you can take action.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. So in the work that reconnects, there's something called the spiral. And this was one of the things that really, that I think there's a lot of wisdom here, and there's a lot in Jewish tradition that also speaks to some of these different 4 steps on her spiral. So one is starting in gratitude for what we love and why we love it. I don't know if anyone ever had an experience in climate spaces where we started from the place of like fear.
Yeah.
Like most of it actually feels pretty easy to access. Like, so one of the ideas behind this is that it can be helpful to start from a place of gratitude because it reminds us what we care about, and what we care about is what's at stake in this challenge, in this time of life in a climate changing world. So, hold on, just check. Oh, we have an even number. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to invite you. We're going to just do we're going to do a 2-minute exercise. The question is, it's called open sentences. You'll turn to one other person near you. So maybe the 2 of you can talk, and the 2 of you, and maybe the 2 of you could talk across the table. And there's a prompt. The prompt is going to be something I love about being alive on Earth is, and some things. So, for example, like if it's my turn to talk, I'll say some things I love about being alive on Earth are, I love coffee in the morning. I love my niece and nephew. They're incredible. I love seeing them discover the world. I love getting to go on hikes in the Blue Hills. I love getting to like hang out in like lakes in the summer. And I would just keep going. Just keep answering whatever kind of stream of consciousness. For about a minute. I'll tell you when to switch. And then the next person will get to say some things I love about being alive on Earth are. Okay? Okay, great.
I guess I could talk about some things I like about being alive on Earth. I like
Why don't you go first, David?
I like playing the piano and listening to music.
Okay, let's come on back
I used to
together.
like
This is the taste of let's just take a breath there. Just breathe in all that good, all the things that came up that you want to hold on to. I like to think of sometimes like having a lot of proverbial pockets. You just like get to fill up all your pockets with all those good things, because there's so many moments when we need to lean back on those, when we need to remember, get invited to the next meeting and the next meeting and the next whatever hearing or things like that. And sometimes you just need to step out to that park that you love and, notice the ducklings or whatever it is. And it's something that I think starting in gratitude is one way of spiritually resourcing ourselves for the long haul. So the spiral starts with gratitude. It moves to honoring our pain for the world. Some of the ways in which, in the work that reconnects and in Dayenu's philosophy and spiritual adaptation work as well, it's helpful to make some space, to name what we're anxious about, what we're afraid of, what we're angry about. I hear a lot of anger about various lack of action, lack of movement, anger at past generations. Hi. And we're not going to spend time there today. We don't have enough time to really, I wouldn't want to short shrift that. But that is a helpful step to then move to the third part, which is where we will spend time, which is about opening to new possibilities. Opening to new possibilities is about imagination. And it's also, I would say, about the need for describing where we actually want to go. Some people call it like climate storytelling, or it's basically like, how are we supposed to get to a more just and livable future if the only story we can tell is the dystopic one of where we don't want to end up. And we have a lot of incredible storytelling around that dystopic future. Many great cli-fi, climate science fiction and climate fiction writers. We have a lot of media that tells us the story, not to mention the news on many days, that tells us the story of where we don't want to be. So part of our work, and this is something that really grew out in part from a piece that Rebecca Solnit wrote in 2022, I believe, part of the work of this third section, as Dayenu has conceived of it, is about telling the story. I'll just read the quote from her. In order to do what the climate crisis demands of us, we have to find stories of a livable future, stories of popular power, stories that motivate people to do what it takes to make the world we need. So we, when I read that article, and this is one quote from a much longer article, 2023, part of what I get to do is think like, okay, Judaism knows something about storytelling. We have Passover Seder. We have stories from one generation to another. We're good at storytelling. So what does it mean to do this in the context of a Jewish climate movement? And when I think of Jewish tradition around radical imagination and storytelling of what could be, one of the things that came to mind is the field of midrash. Midrash is, anyone have a definition of midrash? Heard of it? Okay. Midrash is this word that essentially means lidrosh, to tell, to explore in different ways, to interpret. There we go. And the field of midrash is one that is about 2,500 years old, and it's still going today. So it is a body of literary work that mostly is commentary on Torah. I've heard it described as fanfic on Torah. It often fills in gaps in the story or comes in to explain certain things kind of between the lines. And some of the authors of this midrashic literature, both in ancient times and today, bring in a lot of things that are not in the text, right? They're wildly imaginative. They bring in all different ideas. So what we're going to do is look at one midrash together, one of these teachings. This is from a work from a collection of midrash called Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. It's the second source on there, 8th or 9th century midrash. So this is a pretty old one. A lot of the commentary here has to do with the moment. So just to zoom in for a moment on biblical narrative. There's this moment, the Israelites, they were enslaved in Egypt, they're about to leave, and a lot of the work that Dayenu has been doing around midrash as a practice, not just as a cool thing to study, but midrash as a practice that can help us flex our imaginations and think beyond our current realities to more, to the world we want, to tell the story of the world we want. So a lot of what we've been doing is around this moment of the Israelites leaving Egypt, in part because it was a moment of total transformation. It's not the only one in Jewish history. There's a lot of examples of ancestors in Jewish tradition reimagining their situation or their time, inventing things that were totally different than what came before. I would say this moment really calls for that kind of radical imagination. But this is one of those moments. So, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, can I get a volunteer to read the English here? Yeah, Sam.
Miriam began to sing and to offer praise before the Holy Blessed One, and all the women followed her, as it is said. And Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a tambourine. But how did they have timbrels and dances in the wilderness?
Okay, pause there. Okay, so this is this moment, right? The Israelites, they're still in slavery in Egypt, and or Mitzrayim, in the narrow place, literally. And this is the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer saying, okay, well, we know they're going to be celebrating on the other side. Where in the world did these tambourines come from? So his response, he answers his own question.
Before they left Egypt, they had prepared themselves, tambourines and dances.
Yeah, they've been practicing their dance moves there on the shore of the sea as they're fleeing with the matzah on their back, Hi, welcome. So I love this midrash because it is, it's multi-layered, right? We have not only, we have someone in the 8th or 9th century looking back at this narrative from, of kind of mythic biblical ancestors from even before, and saying, well, of course, when they were in that narrow place, that place of it feeling like there was no other way for society to function or no other way forward, what were they doing? They were packing the instruments that they would need to celebrate. They were packing the instruments that they would need to bring people together and dance. They were practicing their dance moves. And I'm curious, first of all, how does this story land for you? Like what comes up for you when you read this? Let me pause there.
I have a very recent moment that kind of relates to this. I was in a dentist office and having I hadn't been to the dentist in 3 years. Shame me, please. But
no shame here.
I was having a painful cleaning, and I was I was trying to get through it. They ended up stopping because they were I don't want to make you uncomfortable. But I was trying to get through it. Novocaine or whatever. Trying to recite Taylor Swift lyrics in my head.
Good strategy.
Arming myself with music in a painful situation.
Totally. Yeah. It's powerful stuff.
I don't know if any of y'all have read Station 11. It's it was written pre-COVID, but it's a post apocalyptic disease novel. And it focuses on this what develops in the wake of horrors is a traveling theater and Shakespeare troupe.
Whoa.
And the way they make their living in this post-apocalyptic world is they travel and they put on performances and music and arts, and they the sort of intrinsic value of people remembering from before what art and music brought them kind of keeps them safe from the terrors of what that world would be like. But because a lot of the times the towns they go through are so hostile and there's so much tribalness and in this world, the being artists helps them break through that the world that the author created, and sort of the how they see their work as bringing humanity back, and how grateful people are when they put on these performances, because it reminds them of the humanity and what they valued, and they're always scavenging for musical equipment and costumes and just things that I don't know. It was a story that really resonated with me. So
Wow.
I recommend the book, but that's what came up for me when you.
Yeah, and also it is. There are countless examples. And this is a very ancient one, but there are countless examples of times when, in some sense, when we were in narrow places, right? Peoples who are in dire straits, creating art, creating music, drawing on imagination of what would be. I mean, I don't know. My ancestors were in very narrow straits in Eastern Europe, and had to imagine something beyond the place that they were in, and went to places like the U.S. they had never been to. And I mean, that happened for a few generations. And I imagine some of the others in this room also, come from lineages where people had to reinvent themselves and had to imagine what could come next. So we are, I want to spend so much longer here.
Yeah.
We had, anyway, I'm going to offer the full version of the workshop in Western Mass in October, but maybe we'll do another one in Boston if
What do you mean
people
by
are
Western
interested.
Mass?
What I mean is Amherst.
Okay. That is Western Mass, yes. Not Worcester.
No.
I grew up in Western Mass.
Though I will say it's something Dayenu offers at this point. We offer fully funded around 10 workshops a year in different communities across the country. So if your Jewish community or organization want to host one, be in touch. We're booking for next year right now. But that is not the point. The point is I want to share with you a moment to just get to write a little bit. Here's some postcards. Here's some more postcards. Take a postcard. So this is an invitation. It's blank on one side. There's some photos on the other. But the invitation, again, without going to spend a lot of deep time in this space, but the invitation is to write a postcard to be future ancestors for a couple minutes. So to write a postcard from the metaphoric other side of the shore, other side of the sea, from the time and place in which we have addressed the climate crisis. We are living with a sense of interconnectedness. The human communities, all life communities are, they're not all perfect. There's still problems in the world, but they are life-sustaining and supporting each other in various ways. So before you even pick up your pen, just take a moment, and if you want to close your eyes, you can, don't have to. Just take a moment and think about, what does that world, let's say it's the year 2200, it's about 175 years from now. It is the world that we desperately want. And what does that world, when you step into it, sound like? What do you notice in that world in terms of how people are interacting with one another? What are some of the systems that are in place so that all people have their needs met, or people are being cared for? How are people getting around? Notice one or maybe two just things about that world. I like to think artifacts from that time. Maybe it's societal practices or technologies or lived values that you want to hold on to for today, for the world today. And when you're ready, you can turn your attention to this postcard. This is a postcard from the year 2200 to yourself today. And write a little note as you want, with any guidance or wisdom or just observations that you want to share from that life-sustaining time for yourself today. And I'll say you can leave space for an address.
It's supposed to be positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I know this is
All right. Let me.
Yeah. And because this is a very short visit to the future, come to a comfortable or uncomfortable stopping place. And I'll say, just as an invitation, you can either take these postcards home and put them somewhere where you'll notice them, where you'll see them, or you can write your address on it. Give it to me, and I will send it to you from the future in like a couple weeks. It's really fun to get it in the mail, especially when you've kind of forgotten about this conference, and like to have it like show up again in a few weeks. Up to you. But it is a joy of mine to get to send people their visions from the future. So as you're wrapping that up, I'll just share some of these closing words from Adrienne Rich, great poet and writer. This is from the end of her poem, Dreams Before Waking. What would it mean to live in a city whose people were changing each other's despair into hope? You yourself must change it. What would it feel like to know your country was changing? You yourself must change it. Though life felt arduous, new and unmapped and strange, what would it mean to stand on the first page of the end of despair? And at the bottom of these handouts, I've included, that my black, the color ink, not doing well on my printer. I included the QR codes. If you're someone for whom QR codes are a challenge, just let me know. But there's you can shine your phone at it, and our Take Action page has a whole bunch of different options to learn about Dayenu's current campaigns. We have some great work happening in Massachusetts and across the country. And if you want to know more about that, one of the best things you can do is go to Rachel's session, since she's our campaign manager, is right here today. So lucky to have you here, Rachel.
Yeah.
And
and
the
tabling if you also want to come.
yeah, we have a table, and
get a
the
sticker,
other two things. The other two things that are here. One is we just last week, right before Shavuot, we put out the second edition of our Jewish Climate Movement Songbook. It has over 75 songs, chords, links. Has a whole section for songs for healing, and different section for songs for the streets, and all of that. So there's a copy of the older version that's at the table. You can stop by. The last thing that's here is we have a bunch of, if you are connected to a Jewish community and either to networks of Jewish educators or clergy or others, we have a lot of climate Torah and other holiday resources that are available at that third QR code. Thank you all so much for this little taste. Thanks for coming. Please do stay in touch. Would love to have conversations with anyone.
Extra one of those.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Totally. Oh, right. You joined us. Hi. Mayim. Nice to meet you. I'm Laura.
I have one comment, which
Yes.
I do a gratitude practice, and just like you did in the beginning,
Yeah.
but there's a second step to it, and you basically kind of go, what's complex about one of these gratitudes? Because they're all a little complicated. They're
Yeah.
not like, oh, I just
I'm
love
just
my
totally
garden.
happy about it. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And so you take the complexity and turn it into, you think about it, so, oh yeah, well, I have weeds and whatever. And then you turn it into first person, present tense, positive, sort of.
Huh.
And it's really, it's like, it makes your mind, it's creative. It's like, oh, like if there's parts that you don't like, or,
Wait, so for example, I have a lot of weeds in my garden.
Right. So
How would
when my garden's full of weeds, I can go out there and meditate on what it means to be
Yeah.
pulling out the things I don't like.
Yeah.
Or-
Or it means that it's getting enough sun and rain and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
It's
Thank
really-
you for sharing.
What's cool is that when it's more personal,
Mm-hmm.
it really makes you think, okay, I love my daughter, but
Yeah.
she challenges me. And
Yeah.
so
No,
then it's
no.
like,
That never happened.
Yeah.
that's really, this is my daughter challenge is a great opportunity for me to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, and it
Yeah.
actually reminds me a little bit of some of the, when people say to me when it's a gorgeous day in February,
Mm.
and people are like, oh, this is awful, but I'm also kind of happy, but I'm not allowed to be happy. But just, those are the moments where I'm just like, look, this is it is hard living in a climate changing world. Soak up the sunshine, go on a good walk,
Yeah.
and then keep joining movements and doing what you can. It's not either or.
Right.
No, there's adaptive management.
And in fact,
things like that.
yeah, I
So-
think some of the ways in which both action can be an antidote to despair, and also just whatever it is that fills up your soul. I think we really need it in this work. I'm very grateful to get to do spiritual adaptation work in conjunction with organizing campaigns work, because I think the two are strongest together. Anyway, if anyone wants to give me your postcard, I will send it back with
Sure,
delay.
why not? Although I'm like, oh, well.
And you can read it too.
Okay. Well,
I always say postcards, if there's no, you can read them. They're open.
It's
That's
true.
not
It's
federal.
true. And there's a sign-in sheet coming